Her phone moved, then stopped here. That means someone turned it off.
Yeah, this isn't good.
All units spread out. We have a possible abduction.
We found something.
April 13th, 2011, began as an ordinary Wednesday morning for 20-year-old Holly Bobo. She woke up early, had breakfast, and got ready for her nursing exam at the University of Tennessee. Her parents, Karen and Dana, had already left for work. Her older brother Clint was still asleep down the hall. Around 7:30 a.m., Holly's longtime boyfriend Drew Scott called her. Just a quick check-in before her day, since he was out turkey hunting on her grandmother's nearby property.
After the call, Holly grabbed her things and headed to the garage where her Mustang was parked. But she never drove away. About 10 minutes later, a neighbor heard a loud, alarming scream coming from the Bobo home. He immediately told his mother, who called Karen at work. Meanwhile, Clint woke to the family dogs barking. Looking outside, he saw Holly kneeling in the garage, face to face with a man dressed in camouflage. They appeared to be talking. Holly seemed upset, but Clint assumed the man was Drew. Maybe an argument, maybe a breakup. He didn't intervene. He watched the two of them walk together toward the woods behind the house and thought nothing of it. It would be minutes before he realized he had just witnessed his sister being taken. And by the time he did, they had already disappeared into the tree line. Holly Bobo had walked into those woods and would not be coming back. The moment caring Bobo told Clint the man in the garage was not Drew, Clint ran back to the window, but they were gone. He called 911 immediately. Law enforcement responded fast. Deputies flooded the property. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled. Over 1,000 volunteers spread through the dense Tennessee woods, desperate to find any trace of Holly. Investigators quickly found red stains in the garage, confirmed to belong to Holly, proving there had been a violent struggle and that this was no misunderstanding. It was an abduction. But the investigation stumbled almost immediately. The garage, the last place Holly was seen alive, was not immediately secured as a crime scene. People walked through it freely before investigators understood the full gravity of what had happened. Critical evidence may have been disturbed. Neighbors came forward with accounts of screams and suspicious men in camouflage near the property that morning, but those details were not prioritized quickly enough. Adding to the unease, Holly's phone didn't simply go dark. It moved, pinging towers along back roads leading away from the property before going silent around 8:30 to 9 a.m. When the phone was eventually recovered, the SIM card had been removed. Someone had planned this carefully. Investigators began to believe the abductor may have known Holly, known her routines, and known exactly when she would be alone. Days turned into weeks. The search turned from rescue to recovery. And hope slowly faded.
One of the first people investigators looked hard at was Terry Britt, a known predator with a documented history of targeting young, blue-eyed blonde women, a description that matched Holly precisely. Even more alarming, his home was located in the same direction Holly's cell phone had last pinged before going silent. When police questioned Britt, he became defensive and insisted he had nothing to do with her disappearance. He claimed he had been at a salvage yard with his wife that morning, purchasing a bathtub, and produced a handwritten receipt to prove it. The salvage yard had no record of the transaction.
Investigators wiretapped Britt's home, hoping he would slip up. He never did. But his words during questioning were deeply disturbing. He spoke about Holly's abductor in chillingly intimate terms, describing the excitement of having her body. At one point, he even offered to take a plea deal, something people typically only do when they believe police have real evidence against them. But they didn't. No physical evidence tied Britt to Holly's disappearance, and investigators had no choice but to let him go. For the Bobo family, the following years were a kind of slow torture. Every phone call felt like it might finally bring answers. Every day of silence made the wait.
In March 2014, nearly 3 years after Holly vanished, and before her remains had even been found, prosecutors announced what they called a major breakthrough. Arrests were made. Zach Adams, a known local criminal, his brother Dylan Adams, and their associate Jason Autry were taken into custody, charged with aggravated kidnapping and first-degree murder. 2 cousins were briefly charged as well, before those cases fell apart. Shane Austin was offered an immunity deal in exchange for testimony, but he died by suicide in a hotel room in February 2015 before the deal materialized. His attorney called the investigation a witch hunt built on rumors.
The case rested heavily on a confession from Dylan Adams, a young man with an intellectual disability who was especially vulnerable to pressure. Dylan told police he had visited his brother Zach's house the morning of Holly's abduction and found her alive, injured, sitting in a green chair while Jason stood over her. He claimed Zach admitted to horrific acts and had even recorded them. No such video was ever found.
On September 7th, 2014, a local man named Larry Stone was out in the woods near Interstate 40, searching for ginseng. He knew those woods intimately. When he spotted a large bucket sitting where it didn't belong, he flipped it over and went cold. Inside were items he later said he still can't speak about. Then he turned around and saw human remains scattered across the forest floor. A skull, ribs, a shoulder blade, teeth. Nearby were Holly's purse, lipstick, a pen,
her inhaler, and her driver's license. A forensic examination confirmed the remains were Holly's. There was a bullet hole in the back of her skull.
The trial of Zach Adams in 2017 was built almost entirely on the testimony of Jason Autry, who agreed to testify against Zach in exchange for a reduced sentence. Jason told the jury that Zach, Dylan, and Shane had gone to the Bobo home that morning to discuss drug manufacturing with Clint, arrived early, and panicked when Holly came outside screaming. He described helping move her body later, wrapped in a multicolored farm blanket, and testified that when they discovered
After his release from prison, Jason Autry dropped a bombshell. He said he made the entire story up. According to Jason, he constructed his testimony over about 3 days while sitting in jail, using discovery files, phone records, and timelines handed over by the prosecution itself. He did not witness Holly's murder. He did not help move her body. He took real documents, mapped out a plausible timeline, and then inserted Holly into it. In his own words, "We had to add Holly to that story, but I was trained." The key witness who sent a man to prison for life now says he fabricated the whole thing to save himself from the death penalty.
Zach Adams' defense team immediately filed a petition to overturn his conviction, arguing the case had rested almost entirely on testimony that the state's own star witness now admits was invented. In June 2024, the case returned to court. Holly's parents found themselves sitting in the same courtroom again, facing a nightmare that refuses to end. Not just grief, but the possibility that justice was never truly served. The question that hangs over everything remains unanswered. If the men convicted